So have you seen my IOC, my slide?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, okay. So shall we start now? Okay, so in the first class, I have introduced you to some general concept and also um, main features, and some components related to the logistics, and also kind of the concept, general concept related to the supply chain management. And also I have shown you the difference between the logistic and supply chain management. So shall we continue with the some kind of the key logistic activities? It means I'd like to once again emphasize with you about the main activities that we are analyzing in the logistic concept. So everything seems now more familiar with you, like because related to the key logistic activities, we have customer service, demand forecasting, inventory management, logistic communications, material handling, order processing, packaging, parts and service support, plant and warehouse size selections, procurement, reverse logistics, traffic and transportation, warehousing and storage. So once again, I just like to emphasize with you, they are the key logistic activities that can support to the whole logistic system. So previously in the, I think you still remember one about the one chart, about the charts that I shown is about the input and output of logistics system, and also I've shown you and analyze a little bit about the key the logistic activities that can support the whole logistics system. So I don't want to remind you again. And this is the development of logistics has been past 6 eras. So in which you will have the first one, the eras, the first eras, it means from farm to market in early 19th centuries, sorry, 20th centuries. So it means from 1916 to 1940. So we have the major influence, agricultural economies, distribution of farm products, transportations. So it means at the beginning of the 20th century, so we want to, one of the main things that we want to focus on is to how to distribute the agricultural products from the farm to the market. So via the different channels, so, and using different type of transportations most. The next one, the next era from 1940 to 1960, major influence military with World War II. So I think all of you still remember about our histories. We had the World War I and World War II. So because in the 20th centuries from 1940 to 1960, so we have to, of course, we have to remind everybody about the military related to the World War II. And of course, the logistic activity at that time needed to focus on those kind of all the activity that can support that kind of work. And also we mentioned about the independent functions and institutional approach related to the logistics. So it means we have to mention about the inbound and outbound logistics, and it in the narrower scope, we have to mention to the inbound and outbound transportations, wholesaling, retailing, physical distributions. The third eras from early 1960 to early 1970. So we call this is the integrated functions. So it means we need to. So now we have to integrate, or we need to cooperate all the functions into the same pictures, into the one pictures. So it means we have the major influence related to the industrial economies. So everybody needs to think about the industrials, the new era related to industrial economies. So it means we need to link everything together. We need to mention to another approach, to another way to approach the logistics concept related to the total logistic cost. So later on, I'm going to show you just a little bit about the total logistic cost. And the fourth eras. It means we call this era as the customer focus from early 1970 to mid 1980. So it means now we are in these eras. We started to think about the customer, and we define the customer is define the purpose of any logistics system and also the supply chains. So that's why we have to think about the customer service and also the inventory clearing, about the productivity, about link node or influence. The fifth one is major influence related to the IT management strategies. It means we have higher levels of development of logistics. So we not only think about the activities related to the industrials economies, but also think about the IT, the information technologies. The supporting from the information technology can help us a lot, can bring a lot of benefits to the not only the logistics system, but the global economies. And of course, you have to think about the strategic management. So we have to mention about some kind of the new concept like globalizations, reverse logistics, environment, integrated supply chain management. So after the fourth eras, so it means we have a little bit higher development of logistics. So now we have to think about the more important thing like the sustainability. So that's why we mentioned the reverse logistics. We have mentioned the environment, integrated supply chain management, or sustainable supply chain management. And the sixth one is the behavioral and boundary spending. It means a little bit in the futures, more of the near future and far futures. So the major influence of marketing, social science, behavioral aspect of interfirm relation theory development, customer perception of logistics system. So it means we are in the era number 5, and of course we are reaching to the era number 6 a little bit. So we still need more time to reach to the whole concept of era number 6. So let's go to the one of the also I think the important concept related to logistics. It means the total cost. Total cost. So what is the total cost? So actually the total logistic cost is a kind of very controversial concept. So why I call this the controversial? Because for many years, but we cannot have the kind of the unique formula or unique concept related to total logistic cost. And if we want to mention the total logistic cost, so we have actually you can have two concepts. The first one is national total logistic cost, and the second one is enterprise or the firm logistic cost. So of course you have the two different ways or two different formula to define by the national total logistic cost and also the firm's logistic cost. But this is a very important concept for any countries and also for any firm or business, because you know that if we want to reduce our costs, or in other words, you want to increase our the effective futures, or if we want to have more, if we want to be more competitive in the market, so of course we need to reduce our costs. So in our cost, of course, we have to think about the logistic cost, because usually logistic costs account for it. Of course, it depends on the different kind of business or different kind of firms, but usually the cost of kind of very huge amount in the total logistic cost of the firm of the business. So that's why we need to reduce. But if we want to reduce, so we need to understand very well about the total about the concept. So that's why in all countries we have we should realize about we need to be aware to the very important things like the goal of the organizations or the firm's business should be to reduce the total cost of logistic activities rather than focusing on each activity in isolations. So, of course, we have to think about the independent activities, but finally, we need to calculate the total logistic cost, the total cost of logistic activities. And the final purpose is how to reduce that kind of cost, not to just focus on the activities one by one. So the major logistic cost categories also can be classified as according to the activities in the whole logistics system. Like we have to think about the cost in order to meet the customer requirements, or in other words, customer service level. So how to reach the customer service level? How about the cost to reach that kind of things? And the other thing is transportation cost, of course. As I mentioned with you, that transportation is one of the most important activities in the whole logistics system. And basically, transportation costs account for about one third of the total logistic cost. Because for any between any chains or among the different chains in the logistics or in the even in the supply chains, so we need transportation activities. Like we need to transport the raw material from the supplier to the factories, and then from the factory to the wholesaler, wholesaler to retailer, retailer to the customers, so on and so forth. So for between any parties, different parties in the logistics system of the supply chain, we need transportation activities. So that's why the transportation costs usually account for one third of the total logistic activity cost. Warehousing costs, I have mentioned really what is a warehouse in the logistics system, and this is also one of the very important things. Order processing and information system costs. It means when we receive an order from the customers, we need to process an order, and then so that after that we can deliver the goods to our customers to reach the customer service level. So we need the order processing cost, lot quantity cost. What is a lot quantity cost? So we can imagine that's like for example, it means we have to define about the size of the of a package, or maybe a size of an order. So like if an order have the big size, like maybe 100 or maybe several hundreds or several thousands items in the lot in the package. So it means we have the very huge lot quantity. So it means the lot. But in other words, if we just deliver the goods to our final customer, so maybe we need to deliver the item independently. So that's why we have the lot quantity cost will be much higher. And inventory carrying costs, I have analyzed with you about the inventory carrying costs. At the time of maybe we need to we need to store the materials at the factory's warehouse, and also after we have the final finished products, we also need to store some of the finished products at the warehouse, so that if we have a kind of the very high, or maybe suddenly the sudden higher requirement or the needs from the customers, so we still can meet the requirement from the customer. It means you can keep the customer service level. But I also emphasize with you that we need to keep the kind of the reasonable inventory level, so that on the one hand we still need the customer, we still can meet the customer needs, but on the other hand we can reduce the inventory carrying costs. So basically, that are the different things that we can include in the total logistic cost of one factory or one logistic system. But of course, it depends on the structures of any firms or business. So the concept related to the total logistic cost can be different. Okay, I think maybe this is that's all for the first chapters. About those, I just want to introduce you some general concept and idea related to logistics. So at least you know what is logistics, what are the components of logistics, what are the key logistic activity, what is logistics cost, and so why we need to analyze about the logistic concept. And the difference between the logistic and supply chain management. So let's say we should understand about that before we come to the very detailed information that only focus on the transportation and for freight forwarding in the next chapters. So before we finish the first chapters, I'd like to show you a video clip that can show you more about how logistic activities can give us the value added to our products. So a moment, please. Can you see the video clip? Okay. Không cần tiếng. Okay, so did you hear the voice from the video?
No, teacher.
No, teacher. Okay. So from the video clips, I just have a questions for you. Like have you seen so from the activities, all the activity in just a kind of the warehouse system? So did you see any value added activities that can support the logistic activities in the video clip? Have you observed any activities that can support to the operation of the warehouse? Mm. Mm. Okay, that's good. Any other opinions?
I realized that the audio processing
Mm.
have contributed to the logistic activity in the warehouse because the first they receive the order and then they label. I mean, they print the
Exactly.
label and then they label each items in the block.
Mm.
And I think they use a. I mean, they use technology to control their each
Exactly.
type of block. For example, the block I will contain some kind of items that related to each other. Yeah, so it can be categorized easier.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other opinions? Any other ones? Would you like to see it again? To watch it again?
Yes.
Maybe I think the quality of the video clip is not really good because maybe the internet network is not really good. But so that's why I'd like to show you again. So you see, this is the wrapping products. And then this is labeling. Refinishings, repackage. All right, so I think at least you have general concept about the logistics and of course in the video clips. So this is only a part of the logistics system, but at least you can see the activity, the operation inside the warehouse, how to process an order, and maybe in the warehouse we have many activities in order to support the our orders, like we can refinishing the products, and we can. And also, we can repackage packing the products before we move or before we deliver the goods to our final customer. So, any questions from you from the first chapters?
Teacher, can I ask a question about the video? I see that they mentioned BRC certified. So, what it means?
BRC certified. So so actually in the logistics, you have many kind of the certificates. So some kind of the certificate related to the quality, related to the measurements, and related to many things in the whole logistics system. So we have different kind of the certificates depending on different items that you have. And so actually this is also, you can see the BRC and SND, SKAL, IEO, IITA. So this is a kind of the system related to the certificates. Like I think you are very most familiar with the ISO. So this is one of the kind of the certificates that can be shown.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from you? So if not, I'd like to introduce you to the second chapter that relates to the transportation and freight forwarding. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
So from the second chapters, I'd like to focus on the transportations and also the freight forwarding. So as I mentioned with you in my syllabus previously, that because we have to come from the sales contract with the relationship between the sellers and the buyers. So in this course, I'd like to introduce with you how to transport, how to move the goods from the seller premise to the buyer premise. And of course, you have to remember that we have the international sales contracts. So it means the sellers and the buyer must be in different countries. In other words, we have to think about how to we have to mention to the terms like exporter and importers. So it means we also will have to mention about the international transportation process. So this chapters is going to tell you about the general concept and also the features related to the transportations. And then from the next chapters, I'm going to introduce you to different kind of transportation modes. From the maritime transportation or sea freight, and then we go to the air freight and the container transportations, and then we'll have the to combine everything so that we have a multimodal transport and so forth. So first of all, let's see about the outline of these chapters. So basically, I'm going to introduce you to the two main parts of these chapters. First one is the concept of international transport, which will be divided into definitions of the international transportations, characteristics, and also the effects. And then we have to go to the second main things of these chapters about the transportation rights or liability. So which will very closely related to the Incoterms. So I'm asking you to read very carefully about the terms and condition in Incoterms 2010. So have you read it? Have you read it? Okay, so later on I'm going to ask you. But first of all, before going to transportation rights or liabilities, we have to, of course, we need to just mention a little bit about the concept of international transport. I think overall we're very familiar with the concept related to transport. So in this context, I just want to focus on international transportations. So what is the international transportations? This is, I think there are many concepts, many definitions related to the international transportations. I just want to use a very simple one. Briefly, international transport is a process in which goods are moved among different countries. So of course we have, this is very, very short and very simple one. So from this concept, so we can infer to the different characteristics of the international transport. So this is from my point of view. So we can see three main characteristics of the features of international transport. First of all, carrying process is conducted among two or many different countries. So this can be seen as the first conditions to be to consider whether the that kind of transport activities can be seen as international or the domestic. So the carrying process is conducted among two or many different countries. So it means, like I mentioned previously, that we have exporter in one country, importer in another countries. So that's why the carrying process must be in different countries. And the second conditions, or the second characteristics is departures and arrival points must be in different countries. So it seems this condition is not really necessary, but I want to emphasize about this characteristic in this way. So usually the departure points, because you have the exporter in one country and importers in another countries, so of course the departure points and arrival points sometimes, and of course in most of the cases, the departure points and the arrival point must be in different countries. Sometimes we have the case as follow. So for example, goods come from Vietnam, and then come to China's, and then come to, or any countries, but because of any reason. So like a reason related to the custom procedures at importer countries, something like that. So our products has to come back to Vietnam. So in that case, it means the first point and the last point in the same countries. So if the first point and the last point are in the same country, so that kind of transportation process cannot be seen as internationals. So that's even though we have few cases in reality, but we still need to consider about the conditions. The most important thing, the most important characteristic of international transport is relationships, which arising from carrying process are regulated by international legal system. So we need to spend several minutes to analyze about this kind of characteristics. So my first question for you is, what are the relationships can be arisen during the transportation process? Of course, we have to focus on the main one. What are the main relationships that can be arisen from the transportation process? Any opinions from you? So I gave you a hint because from the beginning, when I just mentioned video about the syllabus, the content of the course. So I said that you will analyze the course with the role of the cargo owners. It means you are either the sellers or the buyer in the sales contracts. Now, if you think about how to hire a transportation mode to carry the goods from the seller premise to the buyer premise. So, in that case, what kind of relationships can be arisen during the transportation process? Any ideas?
Teacher?
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Yes.
I think that one relationship could be between the exporter or the importer with the carrier.
Exactly. Okay.
And also, sometimes the owner of the warehouse, because the seller, I'm sorry, because the buyer does not have enough warehousing space, so they have to rent space from another service provider.
Okay. So related to the warehouse owners, so this is a kind of, as I mentioned, the warehousing management is also kind of the logistic activities. So I agree with you with that context. But because now we just focus on the transportation process, so that's why I think we should focus on the first relationships, as I mentioned, between the exporter or importer with the carriers, right?
Yes.
So any other opinions? I heard that someone would like to contribute more.
I think another relationship is with the custom office.
With the custom office, right? Yeah. Exactly, because of course we need to do the custom procedures in order to import or export our goods. So once again, I also agree with you, but because now we are talking about the transportation process, so I just want to focus on the main one. The custom procedure, of course, also the very important procedure that the exporter and the importer need to do for their goods in order to export or in order to import. But it more related to the export and import activities like than the transportation process. So that's why once again I'd like to focus more on the relationship between exporter and importer and the carriers. So let's take a look. So have you seen my Word file?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'd like to focus on the two relationships. So actually, generally speaking, you have the one relationship between the cargo owners. So I see your opinion, which means between exporter or importer with the key areas. So now I'd like to divide it into the two relationships. So the first one is at the loading port. What is a loading port? Do you know what is a loading port? I think you are familiar when you study about the Incoterms. What is a loading port?
I think it's the port where you ship the goods to the where you load the goods to the ship.
Right, exactly. How about the discharging port? Very simple, right? Usually the final one, the final port, usually the loading port is the port where we load the goods on board of the vessels, right, and start the itineraries. And of course, in contrast, the discharging port, or sometimes we have the other terms like unloading port. It means the port usually at the arrival port and where we can unload the goods from the vessels, or where we can discharge the goods from the vessels. So I'd like to emphasize on the two relationships, and of course we are talking about if we mention to the in the maritime transportations, of course. So like at the loading port, we have the first relationships. The first relationship here, so I haven't used any terms related to the exporter and importers. So I use the new terms like a shippers and the consignee. So what is the shipper and what is consignee? Who knows? What is the shipper? Have you ever heard about the shippers and consignee? Who is the shipper? Who is consignee?
I think shipper is the person who transport the goods from the exporter to the port, and the consignee is the person who
okay.
takes the goods.
Okay. Any other opinions about the shipper and the consignee?
I think that shipper, in the case that the shipping, the transport process, the transport process, when you issue the bill, then the shipper is the seller and the consignee is the buyer.
So why the translation should related to the bill of lading?
I'm not clear about this.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's good.
I think because in the context of international transportation, the goods are usually transported by sea, so that's why here you refer to the seller and buyer as shipper and consignee.
Can I?
Sure, please.
Yeah. I think shipper is the supplier or the owner of commodities before the commodities that are shipped. Yeah.
How about the consignee?
And I think consignee is one who received the consignment, and then they need to do some kind of activities related to bill lading or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So this is my concept related to shipper and the consignee. So I have to ask you especially about the concept related to the shipper, because I think in Vietnam the concept related to shippers that everybody call every day. So I think it's totally different from this concept, from these definitions. So because the shipper that we call every day, especially in the context of COVID-19, so maybe usually we buy everything online, right? So we call the one who bring the goods to us is the shipper. But it's not really like that. So actually the concept related to the shipper is, actually the shipper is the one who delivers the goods to the key area at the port of loading. So Of course, I think take the example of the maritime transport of the sea freight. So you can see that at the port of loading. So before we can start the itinerary, so the carrier need to have the consignment, need to have the goods. So the shipper is the one who delivers the goods to the consignee at the port of loading, for example. So actually the shipper here can be seen as either exporter or representative of the exporter. So what I mean is I'm the exporter and if I deliver the goods directly to the carrier at the port of loading, so now I am the shipper. However, sometimes if I use the logistic service from a logistic service provider, it means I just deliver the goods at my premise to the logistic companies, and then he or she needs to bring the goods from my premise, from my warehouse to the port of loading, and then deliver to the carriers. So in that case, so logistics company can be seen as the shippers. Or sometimes if I use or I ask another party who can bring the goods to the port of loading and then deliver the goods to the carriers, so that kind of party can be seen as the shippers. So the shippers, once again, is either exporter or representative of the exporter. Similarly, for the consignee is also either the importer, the buyer, or the representative of the buyer. So what I mean is shippers belong to the exporter, belong to the seller's side, and consignee belong to the buyer's side. Remember that. So now, because we have to talk about the transportation process, so that's why we need to know about the relationship between the shippers and the carriers, and also the carriers and the consignee. And you know that during the transportation process, only the carriers is only the party who stay in the vessel, in the ships, in the transportation modes, and bring the goods from the port of loading to the port of discharge. So we are either the shippers or the consignee. We just stay at the port of loading, at the port of discharge, and wait for the whole transportations. So that's why we need to know if something happened between the shippers and the carriers, or the carrier and consignee. If something happened, like for example, I think the most popular one is maybe after the transportation process, if something happened to our goods, like if our goods has been lost or damaged. So how can we sue? How can we claim the carriers and receive the compensation from the carriers? If we want to do so, we need to rely on the legal system. So that's why one of the very important features that I mentioned here is related to the international transportation is relationships which arising from carrying process are regulated by international legal system. So now we all understand about what kind of relationships can be arising during the transportation process. So let's see that those kind of relationships will be regulated by international legal system. So my next question is, what is the international legal system? Can you give me an example related to the international legal system?
CIHG. Is this?
Yeah, it's CIHG, SG.
Yes.
Anything else? Anything that you sorry? Again?
ICC.
ICC. What is ICC? International Chamber of Commerce? Wow.
Yes.
International Chamber of Commerce, what is that? What is the International Chamber of Commerce? Who can give me just a kind of very general concept of the International Chamber of Commerce? ICC. I think ICC is a kind of the organizations.
I think UCC. UCP 600.
UCP. Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else? What is UCP? What is UCP? Can you just clarify a little bit about the UCP?
Em nói tiếng Việt đoạn này được không ạ?
Được.
Nó là các quy tắc thực hành thống nhất ấy.
Về thứ nhất về cái gì?
Tức là các nước thì phải kiểu tuân thủ các quy tắc thực hành thống nhất, khi mà có xảy ra tranh chấp thì sẽ lấy cái đấy để kiểu để giải quyết vấn đề khi mà kiểu các bên không rõ, hoặc là các bên kiểu có mâu thuẫn về ý kiến trái chiều các kiểu ấy ạ.
Nhưng mà trong lĩnh vực gì?
Về hợp
Về
đồng
vấn đề gì?
thương mại và đây là logistic. Về vấn đề là kiểu tranh chấp trong vấn đề hợp đồng, hoặc là bồi thường, hoặc là có xảy ra sự cố ấy.
Chưa chính xác lắm. Any other opinions? Or any other example? I think you have, maybe you have approached the kind of the general concept related to the international legal system, but actually for the I think the first opinion related to CISG is also kind of very good opinions. So basically, usually when we mention about the international legal system in the international transportation sectors, so the most popular one is are the conventions, international conventions. Do you know the conventions? What is conventions? International convention. How can you translate it into Vietnamese? International conventions. What is it? Exactly. So the first thing that we should mention here is international conventions. International conventions. In the transportation sectors, it's very special thus for the different kind of transportation modes, like sea freight, I mean the maritime transportations, air freight, railway, roadway, multimodal transport. I mean, we combine everything together. So we have different international legal system, international rules in order to regulate the relationship between the cargo owners and the carriers. So it means if we use any kind of transportation modes, so we can refer to the different international legal system, international rules. So that's the first legal source that you have to remember. It means we can use that kind of legal source in order to regulate any kind of the conflicts or dispute between the either shipper or exporter or consignee, importer with the carriers. That's the first thing. So beside the international conventions, anything else that you can use? So let me give you an example. So like I am the cargo owner from Vietnam. I am the exporter from Vietnam. And I need to carry a consignment to Singapore. So I need to hire a vessel or ship from the Singapore shipping companies. So what I mean is carrier is Singaporean. I am the exporter, I'm Vietnamese. So my question is, if something happened between me and the carriers, between the Vietnamese and the Singaporeans, so is it possible to use either Vietnamese law or Singapore law to regulate such kind of conflict or dispute? Are you clear my questions? Is that clear for my questions? Again, I am an exporter from Vietnam. I need to transport goods, a consignment from Vietnam to Singapore. And in reality, I hire a service, a ship from the Singapore shipping company. So what I mean is exporter is Vietnamese, carrier is Singaporean. So if something happened between us, is it possible to use either Vietnamese law or Singapore's law to regulate such kind of conflict or dispute? Any response from you? Yes or no?
I think yes.
Yes.
Yes. Vietnam and Singapore are both participating countries of CISG, and the CISG has stipulated that the contracting parties can either use the CISG or use their own applicable law.
Exactly.
But they have to state that in the contract.
Yep. So another source that we can use in order to regulate the relationship between the different parties in the transportation, international transportation process is the national legal system. So what I mean is the international legal system here, I mean the term internationals can be understood as international with at least one of the two parties. So what I mean is, if we use a kind of the international conventions, so it means this is the international legal system with both of the two parties. But if we use either the Vietnamese law or the Singapore law, or even if the two parties agree to use another national law scale, so it means at least we'll have international feature to one of the two parties. So remember that. So that's all about the characteristics of the international transport. Any questions from you for the definition and characteristics of the international transport? No? Okay. So shall we move to the next the next part about the effects of the international transport? We can say is how the transport, what are the benefits of the international transport? So basically, we can mention the three main things. The first one is promote the development of the international trade. So please ignore my slides. Think and give me your opinions. What are the relationship between the international transport and international trade? International transport and international trade. And how about the impact of international transport on the international trade? Any opinions?
I think that the cheaper the international transport, the more international trade will happen. That's the relationship I think about. Yeah, the cheaper.
The cheaper. Oh,
yes.
Okay. The cheaper. Again, the cheaper the transportation's cost.
Yes. Yes. The more international trade will happen.
Can you explain in more details?
Because I think that the international transport price will be a big barrier for international trade when people think about international trade. Yeah. So the lower the barrier, the more willingness there is for international trade to happen.
The lower the barrier. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Exactly. Any other opinions? Any other ones? How? Mm. Mm. Okay. So, first of all, between the international trade and international transport, so which one has been arisen first? So I think it's not really, it's a bit confused between the two things, like the story between the chickens and egg, right? So, but of course, first of all, when we take a look into the concept related to the relationship between the international trade and international transport. So we can see that first of all, we need to have the international trade. It means we have the needs or requirements so that we think about how to move or how to transport the goods from this country to that countries. So that's why your opinion is the international trade also has a very big impact onto the international transport. But on the other hand, because from the first opinion, so we can see that the triple the transportation cost, so we can have more volume, we can have higher volumes that can be traded in international trades. So I just want to explain again everything again in a very simple way. So please just take a look into the CIF price. I think all we are very familiar with the CIF price. So if I take a look, if I just analyze the component that constitute into the total concept related to the CIF price, so we can see that CIF is equal to C plus I and then plus F. So what is F? What is F?
Freight.
Freight. What is freight? What is freight?
It is the cost for transportation.
Exactly. Okay. So how about the C? What is C?
C is general cost for.
General cost.
Yeah.
Any other opinions about the C? General cost of what? The cost of the goods. Where? The cost of the goods at loading port or unloading port. At the loading port, actually sees the FOB price for many cases, right? So how about the I? What is I?
Insurance.
Insurance. So in more exactly terms, we should call this is the insurance premium. In other words, it is the price, insurance price. Or this is the amount of money that the buyer should pay to the insurance company so that they can have the insurance policy on the insurance contract with the insurance companies, right? So this is the cost of the goods at the loading port. This is the insurance premium, and this is the transportation cost. So we can see that if we have the higher transportation cost, we have the higher transportation cost here. It means we have the higher freight. It means the share price also increase or decrease. Increase, of course. Increase. So it means if we increase the share price, it means our goods at the final destinations will be less competitive, right? Because now for the same kind of goods, so of course we have our competitors. If we offer the price of goods higher than our competitor, so it means our goods will be less competitive. It means we have less chance to sell our goods in the international market. So that's why, coming back to your opinions, especially the first opinion that if we can reduce the transportation cost, it means we can reduce freight here. It means we can reduce our final price of the goods. It means our goods will be more competitive. We have more chance to sell our goods. So there is a very tight relationship between the transportations and international trades. It means if you have, for example, because if we have more chance to sell our goods in the market, in the international market, it means the volume of the goods in the trades, in the international trades will be much higher. So that's why you have the very tight relationship between the transportation costs and the international trades. And we have to focus on the cost, transportation costs. That's the most important thing that we need to analyze if we see the relationship between the transportations and the international trades. So what I mean is, coming back to the slide, we have the other way to mention to this to these effects of the international transport is the amount of goods that circulate between the two countries is in direct proportion to the product of economic potentiality of the two countries, and is in inverse ratio to distance between them. So this is the an idea from Professor Willam in England, and he said that the amount of goods that circulate between the two countries. So it means that he wants to mention to the international trade between the two countries, because it is the volume of the goods between the two countries that exchange between the two countries. It's in direct proportion to the product of economic potentiality of the two countries, and is in inverse ratio to the distance between them. So it means we have the other way to mention to this to the relationship between the international transport and international trade. So let's see whether that kind of awareness, that kind of opinion is exactly the same as our opinion that we have just analyzed previously. So from these opinions, I want to use the following formula to explain for that kind of opinions. So if I denote Q as the volume of the goods that circulate between the two countries, Q, it means it's the quantity. And P1 and P2 are the economic potentiality of the two countries correspondingly, and R is the distance between the two countries. So from that opinion, so you can see that we can have the following formula: Q is equal to P1 times P2 and divided by L. So from this formula, so we can say that if we want to increase the Q, it means we want to increase the volume of the goods that circulated between the two countries. If we want to promote the development of international trade. So what are the way? So based on this formula only, if we want to increase Q, how to do so?
We can increase P1 and P2.
Increase P1 and P2? Any other ways? Exactly. So from this, the concept here, from the formula here, so if we want to increase Q, we can choose either one of the two ways. The first way is increase P1 and P2. It means we increase nominators. And of course, the second way is we need to decrease denominators. It means L. So let's analyze about the feasible features of the two ways. Do you have any idea related to the economic potentialities of any countries? What is it? Or at least what economic potentiality related to? Can you guess? Economic potentiality of the countries? When we mention to the economic potentiality of the countries, so we should mention to anything? Do you have any opinions about the economic potentiality? That's not a concept, only about a general idea related to this to the economic potentiality of the countries. No? Never heard about that? Can you check? I think I can use 1 minute to check about the concept related to economic potentialities in Google. Please check by yourself.
Yes.
Okay, please. Have you finished checking the concept related to the economic potentiality of a country? Can you raise your voice, please?
I read the definitions, but I don't know how a country can increase economic potentialities.
Okay.
Okay.
But so please just read the concept first.
Yeah. It is the potential of a region or nation or corporation for economic development and growth and the creation of surplus value.
Okay, that's very complicated concept. Any other concept that you can check from the Google?
I just found the definition of economic potential, but not potentialities. I don't know what they are different, but I think they are the same. And
Okay.
potential is the total capacity of a nation to produce goods.
Okay. Oh, that's good concept. So total economic capacity. So what can you just analyze? Can you think about the economic capacity of a countries? What are those?
The capacity here is the like capital or labor and the natural endowments.
Exactly. Anything else?
Mm-hmm.
Any other things? Any other things? The labor, the capitals? Anything else? Technologies, exactly. Anything else? Natural resources, something like that?
Also be the political system.
Okay. So I want to tell you kind of this very interesting story that so for a long time in the histories, so all the countries want to focus on that kind of things. I mean the capacity of the countries in order to increase the economic potentiality of the countries. So what I mean is we apply that kind of the way for a long time, and of course we can it bring a lot of results to us. However, nowadays, because and for the first opinion, I think it's very interesting because one of you mentioned the very complicated concept related to this to the economic potentiality of the countries, and she said that I don't know how to increase the economic potentiality of the countries. So that's the problems. What I mean is currently because we have applied that kind of way in long term, so the result that we can gain to be more less and less. So that's why we need to think about the other way in order to increase the queue, the amount of goods that circulate between the two countries. So nowadays, most of the countries now they are not really focusing on the first way anymore. Instead of that, they're focusing on the second way. It means to reduce the distance between the two countries, the distance. So now, if you take a look into the concept related to distance between the two countries, can you just list the different kind of distance between the two countries that you have heard so far? What kind of distance that you have known so far between the two countries? The most popular one is
geographical distance.
Geographical distance. That's the first kind of distance. Geographical distance. Is it possible to reduce geographical distance between the two countries?
No.
Of course not. Right?
Yes.
So, any other ones? Any other ones? Of course, I don't want to mention the geographical distance between the two countries, but it's impossible to reduce it. So actually, I want to focus on the other thing. It means the level of development. The level of development. And especially in this context, I just want to focus on the development, the level, the difference in the development of the transportation sector between the two countries. So once again, even though according to these opinions, we have to focus on the distance, but actually we come back to the same issue. What I mean the same issue is we are talking about the difference in the developments of the transportation sector between the two countries, or in the other words, we have to mention to the transportation costs. So again, if the transportation cost between the two countries is very high, it means our goods can have very expensive price. I mean the final price. It means the goods becomes less competitive. So that's why if we want to reduce the distance between the two countries in terms of the difference between the difference of the developments of the transportation sector between the two countries, it means we should lower down the transportation costs. So again, we have the same problem, the exactly problems with the first way that we have analyzed previously. So either we use any kind of way to approach to the issue. So I think between the international transport and international trade, so we have to focus on the transportation costs, and we have to think about how to lower down the transportation costs. So that's the very important way for us to increase the volume of the goods that can be traded in international trade. So that's about the first effects of the international transport. So shall we have a short break in 10 minutes, and we will come back at 10:53. Okay, yes. Okay, thank you. Bạn Hằng có đấy không nhỉ, Hằng ơi?
Dạ em có ạ.
Hằng ơi, Hằng điểm danh các bạn cho cô và gửi lại danh sách cho cô nhé.
Vâng ạ, đây để